The gunshot that killed her husband 7 years ago still echoed in Diana Whitmore's dreams, and she woke every morning in her small house on the edge of Platteville, Colorado, determined never to let another man close enough to hurt her again. The year was 1878, and the mining town had grown prosperous with silver discoveries in the surrounding mountains. But Diana wanted no part of the wealth or the roughneck miners who flooded the saloons each night. She kept to herself, running a modest dressmaking business from her front parlor, speaking only when necessary to the women who came for alterations and new Sunday dresses. Her fingers were nimble with needle and thread, and her reputation for fine stitching kept food on her table and wood in her stove through the harsh Colorado winters. The other women in town whispered about her coldness, the way she never smiled at church socials, how she turned down every widower and bachelor who tried to court her. They did not understand, and Diana had no intention of explaining the scars that lived beneath her high-collared dresses and behind her careful composure. It was a Tuesday morning in late April when Isaac Wendell rode into town on a dusty chestnut mare, his saddlebags worn but well-maintained, his hat pulled low against the spring sun. He was not like the rough miners or the fancy gamblers who passed through Platteville. There was something quiet about him, something patient in the way he walked his horse down Main Street, observing everything with calm blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-darkened skin and the lean build of a man who had spent years working cattle across open ranges. He stopped at the livery stable, speaking in low tones to the owner, then carried his belongings to the boarding house run by Mrs. Henderson, a round-faced widow who loved gossip more than she loved the Bible. Diana heard about the new arrival before noon, as she always did. Mrs. Henderson came bustling into her parlor with a dress that needed hemming, but her real purpose was clear from the sparkle in her eyes. "Tall fellow, quiet type," Mrs. Henderson said, settling her considerable bulk into Diana's best chair. "Says he is looking for work on one of the ranches. Has manners, though. Called me madam and took off his hat soon as he stepped inside. Not like these miners with their crude tongues and muddy boots." Diana made a noncommittal sound and examined the hem that needed adjusting. She had perfected the art of appearing to listen while letting the words wash over her like meaningless water. "Asked about the town, who runs what, where a man might find honest work," Mrs. Henderson continued, undeterred by Diana's silence. "I told him about the Jacobson Ranch north of town. They are always needing good hands, especially with spring roundup coming. He thanked me real polite like and went to get himself a meal at the restaurant." Diana pinned the hem with practiced efficiency. "I will have this ready by Friday." Mrs. Henderson sighed, recognizing dismissal when she heard it, but she tried one more time. "You know, dear, not every man is like Friday," Diana repeated, her voice flat and final. After Mrs. Henderson left, Diana stood at her window, watching the street below. She caught a glimpse of the stranger as he walked past, and despite herself, she noticed the easy confidence in his stride, the way he touched his hat brim when he passed two ladies on the boardwalk. Then she jerked the curtain closed and returned to her work, angry at herself for looking at all. Isaac Wendell found work at the Jacobson Ranch, just as Mrs. Henderson had predicted. The ranch sprawled across good grazing land north of Platteville, with water rights to a creek that ran cold and clear from the mountains. Old Samuel Jacobson had built the operation over 30 years, and now in his 60s, he relied heavily on his foremen and hired hands to keep things running. Isaac proved himself capable on his first day, demonstrating an understanding of cattle and horses that came only from long experience. He worked hard without complaint, spoke little, and earned the respect of the other ranch hands through competence rather than bravado. He came into town on Saturday afternoons, like most of the ranch hands, but while the others headed straight for the saloons, Isaac usually stopped at the general store, the livery, or the small restaurant run by a Chinese couple who served better food than anywhere else in Platteville. He was polite to everyone, never drunk, never loud, and within a few weeks, the townspeople had accepted him as a steady, reliable presence. Deanna might never have spoken to him at all if not for the incident with the runaway wagon. It happened on a Saturday in mid-May, when the weather had turned genuinely warm and the streets were busy with weekend commerce. Deanna had just left the general store, her arms full of packages containing fabric, thread, and buttons for her current projects. She was concentrating on her bundles, not watching the street, when she heard someone shout a warning. She looked up to see a freight wagon careening down the slope of Main Street, its team of horses panicked and running wild, the driver desperately sawing on the reins with no effect. Deanna froze, directly in the wagon's path. Her packages tumbled from her arms as her body locked in place, memories of another violent moment flooding her mind with paralyzing force. She could not move, could not breathe, could only watch death bearing down on her in the form of 2,000 pounds of horseflesh and wood. Then someone grabbed her around the waist and yanked her backward with tremendous force. She and her rescuer tumbled together into the narrow space between the general store and the barber shop, landing hard on the packed dirt as the wagon thundered past, missing them by inches. The horse's hooves threw up dust that choked her lungs, and the wagon's wheels screamed against the ruts in the street. Diana lay on the ground, gasping, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The man who had saved her was pressed against her side, his arm still around her waist, his breathing equally ragged. For a long moment neither of them moved. "Are you hurt?" His voice was low and rough, still breathless from the exertion. Diana managed to shake her head. The man carefully released her and pushed himself up, then extended a hand to help her rise. She hesitated only a second before taking it, and he pulled her to her feet with easy strength. It was Isaac Wendell. Up close, she could see that his eyes were not just blue but had flecks of gray in them, like storm clouds gathering. There was concern in his expression, but no expectation, no demand for gratitude or recognition. He simply looked at her with those steady eyes and asked again, "Are you certain you are not injured?" "I am fine," Deanna said, her voice shakier than she wanted it to be. She pulled her hand from his and brushed dust from her skirt, needing something to do with her trembling fingers. "Thank you." People were gathering now, exclaiming over the close call, someone running after the wagon which had finally come to a halt further down the street. Isaac bent and began collecting her scattered packages, checking each one for damage. Most of the contents had survived the fall. "Your thread is all tangled now," he said, holding up a spool that had unraveled across the dirt. "But the fabric looks unharmed." Diana took the packages from him, carefully avoiding touching his hands. "I appreciate your assistance." He studied her for a moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling that he saw more than she wanted him to see. But he only touched his hat brim and said, "Glad I was nearby, madam." Then he turned and walked away, not waiting for further thanks or trying to parlay the rescue into conversation. Deanna watched him go, feeling strangely off balance. Men who did heroic things usually wanted something in return. They wanted recognition, admiration, or opportunities to press their advantage. Isaac Wendell had simply walked away. She thought about that as she returned home, as she sorted her purchases and rewound the tangled thread. She thought about it that evening as she prepared her simple supper, And she thought about it that night as she lay in bed, listening to the wind whisper around the eaves of her little house. 7 years ago, Thomas Whitmore had swept into her life with grand gestures and pretty words, and she had been foolish enough to believe them. She had married him within 3 months, ignoring the warnings from her parents, ignoring the small signs of his temper and his drinking. The marriage had been a nightmare of escalating violence that ended when Thomas got into a drunken argument with another gambler and took a bullet to the chest in the street outside their rented rooms. Deanna had been 20 years old, bruised and terrified, and she had sworn on his grave that she would never again let a man have power over her life. She had kept that promise. For 7 years, she had built walls around her heart and her life, keeping everyone at a careful distance. It was lonely, but loneliness was safer than trust. The next time Deanna saw Isaac Wendell, he was standing outside the church on Sunday morning, talking with Samuel Jacobson. Deanna attended services faithfully, not from any great religious conviction, but because it was expected, and she could not afford to be seen as improper or immoral. Her business depended on her reputation. She walked past the two men with her eyes down, intending to slip into her usual pew without acknowledgement. "Mrs. Whitmore," Samuel Jacobson called out. "Might I have a word?" Deanna stopped, suppressing a sigh. She turned and waited as the old rancher approached, Isaac a step behind him. "I wanted to thank Isaac here properly for his quick action yesterday," Samuel said, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "Could have been a real tragedy if not for him. The whole town owes him a debt." "I have already expressed my gratitude," Deanna said quietly. "Well, I just wanted to add mine," Samuel continued. "Isaac is a fine addition to our community. Reminds me of myself 40 years ago, steady and hardworking. We are lucky to have him." Isaac looked mildly uncomfortable with the praise. "Just did what anyone would do, sir." "Not everyone has the reflexes or the courage," Samuel said firmly. Then he looked between Isaac and Deanna with the speculative expression of an inveterate matchmaker. "You know, Mrs. Whitmore, Isaac is new to the area. Perhaps you might tell him something about Platteville's history, seeing as your family has been here since the town was founded." Deanna felt a flash of annoyance at the transparent manipulation. "I am sure Mr. Wendell can learn whatever he wishes from any number of sources. Now, if you will excuse me, the service is about to begin." She walked into the church without waiting for a response, feeling Isaac's eyes on her back. She took her seat and stared straight ahead, her spine rigid, her hands clenched in her lap. She knew what Samuel was doing. He was a kind man, always trying to help people, and he undoubtedly thought she needed a husband to take care of her. The fact that she had been taking care of herself perfectly well for 7 years never seemed to occur to him or anyone else in town. After the service, Deanna slipped out quickly, avoiding the social gathering on the church lawn. She walked home alone, as she always did, and spent the afternoon working on a particularly intricate dress for the mayor's wife. The detailed work usually soothed her, but today she felt restless and irritable. She kept thinking about Isaac Wendell's calm eyes and the way he had not pushed for anything after saving her life. She kept thinking about the warmth of his arm around her waist in that split second before they hit the ground, the solid strength of him. She had not been that close to a man in 7 years, and the memory unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Monday brought a surprise. Deanna answered a knock at her door to find Isaac Wendell standing on her porch, hat in hand. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said politely, "I apologize for disturbing you. Mrs. Henderson said you do mending and alterations." Deanna blinked, thrown off balance. "I do." "I tore my good shirt on a fence post," he said, pulling a neatly folded garment from under his arm. Nothing fancy, just a straight rip in the sleeve. I can pay whatever your usual rate is. Diana took the shirt automatically, examining the tear. It was indeed a simple repair, the kind of thing she could do in 15 minutes. I can have this ready by Wednesday. No rush, Isaac said. I only need it for Sundays anyway. He paused, then added, I want you to know, madam, that I did not put Samuel up to that conversation yesterday. He means well, but he does not understand that not everyone wants to be matched up. Deanna looked up at him, startled by his directness. Oh, I figure a woman who has been on her own for 7 years probably has her reasons, Isaac continued, his voice gentle but matter of fact. I just need my shirt mended, nothing more. There was something in his tone, some quality of respect and understanding that made Diana's careful walls waver slightly. Wednesday afternoon, she said, her voice a bit less cold than usual. Isaac nodded, settled his hat back on his head and left without further conversation. Deanna closed the door and stood holding his shirt, feeling strangely confused. She carried the garment to her work table and spread it out, running her fingers over the fabric. It was good quality cotton, worn soft from washing but well cared for. The tear was clean and would mend easily. She found herself wondering about the man who wore it, then firmly pushed the thought away. Wednesday came and Isaac returned in the late afternoon. Deanna had the shirt ready, the repair so neat as to be nearly invisible. He examined it with approval, paid her the exact amount she requested, and thanked her courteously. You do fine work, he said. Mrs. Henderson was right about that. Thank you, Deanna replied, feeling awkward. She was not accustomed to sincere compliments that did not come with strings attached. Isaac settled his hat and turned to go, then paused. Mrs. Whitmore, I want to say something, and I hope you will not take offense. Deanna stiffened, her guard immediately rising. Yes. I know you do not trust men, and I am guessing you have good reason for that. I am not going to ask what happened, because that is your business. But I want you to know that if you ever need help with anything, anything at all, you can ask me. No strings, no expectations, just one neighbor helping another. That is all. Deanna stared at him, her heart beating fast. Why would you offer that? Isaac met her eyes with that same steady, calm gaze. Because I think you have been carrying everything alone for a long time and everyone needs help sometimes. And because I have got time to wait until you believe me. Then he left, and Diana stood frozen in her parlor, those last words echoing in her mind. I have got time to wait. Not pushing, not demanding, just a simple statement of patient willingness. She did not know what to do with that. It did not fit into any category she understood. The weeks passed, and spring deepened into early summer. Deanna found herself oddly aware of Isaac's presence in town, though she tried not to be. She noticed when he came in on Saturdays, noticed that he always seemed to be helping someone with something. He carried Mrs. Kowalski's heavy shopping to her wagon without being asked. He helped old Mr. Peterson fix a broken step on his porch. He broke up a fight between two miners without throwing a single punch, just using his calm authority to settle them down. He never made a show of any of it, never seemed to want recognition or reward. He simply did what needed doing and moved on. Diana told herself it did not matter. She told herself she did not care. But she found herself watching for him anyway, found herself noticing the way he treated his horse with gentle care, the way he listened when people spoke to him, really listened instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. She noticed that he never got drunk, never raised his voice, never bullied or boasted or blustered like so many men did. In early June, a problem arose with her landlord. Deanna rented her small house from Martin Guthrie, a sour-faced man who owned several properties in Platteville. He had always been difficult, slow to make repairs and quick to demand his rent, but Deanna had tolerated him because the house was cheap and suited her needs. Now, however, Guthrie had decided to raise the rent by an amount Deanna could not afford. "Business is business, Mrs. Whitmore," he said when she tried to negotiate. "You pay the new rate or you find somewhere else to live. Makes no difference to me." Diana left his office feeling sick with worry. There were not many suitable places in Platteville for a single woman, and moving would be expensive and disruptive to her business. She walked home slowly, trying to calculate her finances, wondering if she could possibly take in more work to cover the increase. She was so preoccupied that she did not notice Isaac until she nearly walked into him outside the general store. "Pardon me," she said, stepping back quickly. Isaac steadied her with a light touch on her elbow, then immediately released her. "You look troubled, Mrs. Whitmore. Is everything all right?" Deanna started to give her usual deflection, but something about his genuine concern made her hesitate. She found herself saying, "My landlord is raising my rent to an amount I cannot afford. I was just trying to determine what to do about it." Isaac's expression darkened. "Martin Guthrie. Yes. That man is a snake," Isaac said flatly. "Begging your pardon for the language, but he has a reputation for squeezing people. How much is he demanding?" Diana told him, and Isaac's jaw tightened. "That is nearly double what that house is worth." "He is taking advantage because you are alone." "There is nothing I can do about it," Diana said, hearing the defeat in her own voice. "He owns the property." Isaac was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, "What if I talk to him?" "No," Diana said immediately. "I do not need anyone fighting my battles." "I am not talking about fighting," Isaac said. "I am talking about negotiating. Sometimes it helps to have someone else present, someone who knows the value of property and is not personally involved. I have done some horse trading in my time. I know how to deal with men like Guthrie." Deanna wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her to refuse, to maintain her independence, to not let this man get involved in her problems. But practical necessity warred with pride, and necessity was winning. "Why would you do this?" "Because I said I would help if you needed it," Isaac replied simply. "And you need it." Deanna studied his face, looking for hidden motives, for the catch that must be there somewhere. She saw only honest concern and that strange, patient steadiness that seemed to define him. "Very well," she heard herself say, "but if he will not negotiate, I want you to leave it alone. I will not have trouble made on my behalf." "Agreed," Isaac said. "When is your rent due?" "The 1st of July. "I will talk to him this week." 3 days later, Diana was working on a complicated bodice when Isaac knocked at her door. She let him in, her heart beating fast with anxiety about what he might report. "I spoke with Guthrie," Isaac said without preamble. "He has agreed to keep your rent at the current rate." Deanna felt her knees go weak with relief. "How did you manage that?" Isaac's expression was carefully neutral. "I explained that if he persisted in gouging a respectable businesswoman, I would make sure every person in this town knew about it. I also mentioned that Samuel Jacobson takes a dim view of men who cheat widows, and that Guthrie's property relies on water rights that Samuel controls upstream. It was all very cordial." Deanna sat down abruptly. "You threatened him." "I negotiated," Isaac corrected. "There is a difference. I simply made sure he understood the full consequences of his actions." "Why?" Deanna asked, looking up at him. "Why do you keep helping me?" Isaac pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, his manner unhurried. "May I be honest with you, Mrs. Whitmore?" Deanna nodded, not trusting her voice. "When I first saw you, that day I rode into town, you were standing at your window," Isaac said. "You were watching the street with the saddest expression I have ever seen. Then you caught yourself and pulled the curtain closed, like you were angry at yourself for looking. And I thought to myself, That is a woman who has been hurt badly and does not know how to heal. Diana felt her throat tighten. That is none of your concern. Maybe not, Isaac agreed, but I have been hurt too, Mrs. Whitmore. Different circumstances, but I understand what it is like to stop trusting people, to build walls so high that nothing can get in. I spent 3 years like that after my family died. Diana looked at him sharply. Your family, cholera epidemic, 1875, Isaac said quietly. My parents, my younger sister, all gone within a week. I was working a cattle drive in Texas when it happened. By the time I got word and made it home to Missouri, they had already been buried. I was 24 years old, and suddenly I was completely alone in the world. I am sorry, Diana whispered. So was I, Isaac said. I spent the next 3 years drifting, working ranches all over the West, not getting close to anyone, not staying anywhere long. I was angry and lonely and convinced that caring about people only led to pain. Then one day I was working a ranch in Kansas, and the foreman's little boy fell into the creek. I pulled him out, and the foreman was so grateful he tried to give me a bonus. I did not want his money, but he said something that stuck with me. He said, "Son, you can live scared of losing people, or you can live grateful for the time you have with them. Your choice." That was when I realized I was not honoring my family's memory by shutting everyone out. I was just making their loss mean nothing. Diana felt tears burning in her eyes. It is not the same. You lost your family to disease. I lost my husband to his own violence, and before that I lost myself to his cruelty. I was a fool who married a charming liar, and I paid for it every day until he died. I cannot risk being that foolish again. You were not foolish, Isaac said firmly. You were young and trusting, and he took advantage of that. That was his failure, not yours. I should have seen the signs, Diana said bitterly. Everyone else did. My parents warned me, but I would not listen. I thought I knew better. I thought he loved me. How old were you when you married him? 18. And he was how old? 28. Isaac's expression hardened. So he was a grown man who deliberately courted a girl barely old enough to marry, isolated her from her family, and then hurt her. You were not the problem, Mrs. Whitmore. He was. And wherever he is now, I hope he is getting what he deserves. He is dead, Diana said flatly. Shot in a dispute over a card game. I remember feeling nothing but relief when they told me. Does that make me a terrible person? It makes you human, Isaac said, and it makes sense. He leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle. Diana, may I call you Diana? She nodded, too emotionally wrung out to protest the familiarity. Diana, I am not asking you to trust me right away. I am not asking you to let down your walls or take any risks. I am just asking you to let me be your friend. Let me help when you need it. Let me prove over time that not all men are like Thomas Whitmore. I have got time to wait, however long it takes. Diana looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. Why? What do you get out of this? Isaac smiled, a slow, genuine smile that transformed his serious face. Maybe someday, if you ever decide you can trust again, you might consider trusting me. But even if that never happens, I would rather be your friend than nothing at all. You are worth that much patience, Diana. I hope you know that. Then he stood, touched his hat brim, and left her sitting there with tears streaming down her face. They were the first tears she had cried in 7 years, and once they started, she could not stop them. She wept for the girl she had been, for the years of loneliness and fear, for the walls she had built and the life she had missed. She wept until she was exhausted, and then she sat in the gathering darkness, feeling something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt hope. After that day, things changed between Diana and Isaac. Not quickly or dramatically, but in small, incremental ways. When he came to town on Saturdays, he would stop by her house to see if she needed anything from the store. She began to say yes sometimes, letting him carry her heavier purchases. They would talk briefly on her porch, cautious conversations about neutral topics like the weather or the town news. Isaac never pushed for more, never tried to turn the conversations personal or intimate. He simply showed up, reliably and patiently, week after week. In late June, Deanna accepted an invitation to a church social, something she had not done in years. She went because Isaac would be there, though she would not have admitted it to anyone, least of all herself. He asked her to sit with him during the meal, and she agreed, ignoring the whispers and speculative looks from the other townspeople. They sat at a table under the cottonwood trees, eating fried chicken and potato salad, talking about nothing in particular. Isaac told her about working the Jacobson ranch, about the new calves, and the ongoing battle with a family of raccoons in the barn. Deanna found herself laughing, actually laughing, at his deadpan description of trying to chase a particularly stubborn raccoon out of the feed room. "I swear that animal was laughing at me," Isaac said. "It sat up on a beam just out of reach, washing its paws and looking smug." "What did you finally do?" Deanna asked. "Gave up and let it have the feed room for the night," Isaac admitted. "Figured it would leave when it was ready." Sure enough, it was gone by morning. "Samuel says I am too soft-hearted for ranch work." "I think it is called being reasonable," Deanna said. "Fighting a raccoon seems like a losing proposition." Isaac grinned. "That is what I told him." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the children play. Deanna felt more relaxed than she had in months, maybe years. She realized with some surprise that she was enjoying herself. "Deanna," Isaac said quietly, "may I ask you something personal?" Deanna tensed slightly but nodded. "Do you ever think about what you might want if you were not afraid anymore?" Deanna considered the question. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but wanting things seems dangerous. Wanting leads to hoping, and hoping leads to disappointment. Or it leads to good things," Isaac suggested. "Life is not just about avoiding pain. It is also about finding joy when you can." "Is that what you are doing here?" Deanna asked. "Finding joy." "I am trying," Isaac said. "I am trying to build a life instead of just surviving. I would like to save up enough to start my own small ranch someday, maybe down in the valley where the grass is good. Have a few cattle, some horses, a decent house. It is not a grand dream, but it is mine." "It sounds like a good dream," Deanna said softly. "What is your dream?" Isaac asked. Deanna was quiet for a long time. "I used to dream about having a real shop, not just working out of my parlor. A proper dressmaking establishment with a big window and shelves for fabric. I thought about it sometimes before I married Thomas. After he died, I was just focused on surviving. I suppose I stopped dreaming." "Maybe you could start again," Isaac suggested. Deanna looked at him, at his open, honest face, and felt something shift inside her. "Maybe," she said. "Maybe I could." July brought intense summer heat to Colorado, the kind that made work difficult and tempers short. Deanna found herself looking forward to Isaac's weekly visits more than she wanted to admit. He had become a fixture in her life, someone she relied on without quite realizing when it had happened. When her sewing machine broke, Isaac brought a man from the ranch who was skilled with machinery to fix it. When a drunk miner harassed her on the street, Isaac appeared seemingly from nowhere and escorted the man to the sheriff's office with quiet, implacable firmness. He never made a fuss about any of it, never acted like she should be grateful or beholden to him. He simply did what needed doing and moved on. In mid-July, Isaac invited Deanna to go riding with him on a Sunday afternoon. She surprised herself by accepting. He arrived with a gentle bay mare from the Jacobson stable, already saddled and ready. Deanna had not ridden in years, but the skills came back quickly. They rode out of town toward the mountains, following a trail that wound through stands of ponderosa pine and open meadows thick with wildflowers. "It is beautiful out here," Deanna said, breathing in the clean mountain air. "This is one of my favorite spots," Isaac said. "I come up here sometimes when I need to think. It helps to see something bigger than your own problems." They stopped by a creek to let the horses drink, and Isaac spread a blanket in the shade. He had brought bread and cheese and apples, a simple meal that they ate while watching the water flow past. "Isaac," Deanna said hesitantly, "can I ask you something? Anything? Are you courting me?" Isaac smiled slightly. "I would like to if you would allow it, but I am not going to push. I meant what I said about having time to wait." "It has been 3 months," Deanna pointed out, "and I would wait 3 years if that was what you needed," Isaac said seriously. "Deanna, I care about you. I care about your happiness, your well-being, your dreams. If all you ever want from me is friendship, I can accept that. But I would be lying if I said I did not hope for more someday." Deanna looked down at her hands. "I do not know if I can be what you need. I am damaged, Isaac. I have scars that do not show but still hurt. I have nightmares sometimes. I flinch when people move too quickly near me. I do not know if I can ever trust anyone completely again." Isaac reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently took her hand. Deanna tensed but did not pull away. His hand was warm and calloused from work, and his touch was careful, respectful. "You are not damaged," Isaac said firmly. "You are surviving. There is a difference. And I do not need you to be perfect. I just need you to be willing to try when you are ready. We can take this as slowly as you need. We can spend another year just being friends if that is what helps. I am not going anywhere." Diana looked up at him, at those steady blue-gray eyes that had never lied to her, that had never demanded anything she was not ready to give. She thought about the past 3 months, about how he had shown up again and again, patient and kind and utterly reliable. She thought about how she felt when she was with him, safer than she had felt in 7 long years. "I think I would like to try," she whispered. "I am scared, but I would like to try." Isaac's face lit up with a smile that made him look years younger. "That is all I am asking for, just a chance." He did not try to kiss her that day. He simply helped her back onto her horse and rode beside her back to town, and Deanna felt something warm and fragile beginning to grow in her chest. It felt like hope, and it terrified her, but she did not push it away. The rest of the summer passed in a slow, sweet progression. Isaac courted Deanna with old-fashioned patience, never rushing, never pressuring. They went on more rides together, exploring the countryside around Platteville. They had dinner together once a week at the restaurant, ignoring the gossip that swirled around them. Isaac came to her house in the evening sometimes, and they would sit on the porch, talking about everything and nothing while the sun set over the mountains. Deanna found herself opening up in ways she had thought impossible. She told Isaac about her childhood, about growing up in a strict but loving family in Denver. She told him about meeting Thomas at a dance, about how charming he had seemed at first, how he had made her feel special and grown up. She told him, haltingly, about the first time Thomas hit her, 3 weeks after their wedding, and how shocked and confused she had been. She told him about the escalating violence, the fear, the way she had learned to walk on eggshells, trying to anticipate his moods and avoid triggering his rage. She told him about the relief and the guilt she had felt when he died, the way she had rebuilt her life from nothing, determined never to be vulnerable again. Isaac listened to all of it without judgment, without trying to fix or minimize her experiences. He just listened, and when she cried, he held her carefully, letting her set the pace, letting her pull away when she needed space. In turn, Isaac told her more about his own past. He talked about growing up on a small farm in Missouri, about his sister Clara who had been bright and funny and full of life. He talked about coming home to find his family gone, about the crushing guilt of not being there when they needed him. He talked about the years of drifting, of the emptiness that had consumed him, of slowly learning to live again. "I think that is why I understand you," Isaac said one evening in late August. They were sitting on her porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. "I know what it is like to be so hurt that you stop believing good things are possible, but I also know that healing is possible if you are willing to be patient with yourself." "You make it sound simple," Deanna said. "It is not simple," Isaac corrected. "It is hard as hell, but it is worth it." "You are worth it." In September, as the aspens began turning gold on the mountainsides, Isaac kissed Deanna for the first time. They had gone riding again, higher into the mountains this time, and they stopped at an overlook with a view that stretched for miles. The whole valley was spread below them, Platteville a small cluster of buildings surrounded by fields and ranches. "It is so beautiful," Deanna breathed. "Yes," Isaac agreed, but he was looking at her, not the view. Deanna turned and found him watching her with such warmth in his eyes that it made her breath catch. He stepped closer, moving slowly, giving her every chance to move away. She did not move away. He cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "May I kiss you?" He asked softly. Diana's heart was hammering, fear and desire warring inside her. But the desire won. "Yes." Isaac kissed her with infinite gentleness, his lips soft against hers, asking rather than demanding. Diana felt tears slip down her cheeks even as she kissed him back, overwhelmed by the sweetness of it, by the realization that this was what kissing should be like. This was what love should feel like, safe and warm and right. When they finally pulled apart, Isaac wiped her tears away with his thumbs. "Are you all right?" "I am better than all right," Deanna said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I am happy. I forgot what that felt like." "Get used to it," Isaac said, smiling. "Because I plan to make you happy as often as possible." October brought cooler weather and the first hints of the coming winter. Samuel Jacobson announced that he was making Isaac his foreman, a promotion that came with a substantial raise in pay. Isaac was thrilled, not just for the money but for what it represented. He was putting down roots, building a future, and he made it clear that he wanted Diana to be part of that future. "I have been saving money," he told her one evening. "In another year or two, I will have enough to buy some land and start my own operation. I know it is too soon to ask you to commit to anything, but I want you to know my intentions. I am building a life here, Deanna, and I would like to build it with you if you will have me." Deanna looked at him, at this good, patient man who had waited for her, who had proved his worth through actions rather than words, who had never once made her feel pressured or afraid. She thought about the past 7 months, about how he had slowly, carefully, helped her remember how to hope and dream and trust. She thought about how much she had changed, how the walls she had built so carefully had come down brick by brick because of his patient kindness. "I think I would like that," she said quietly. "I am not ready to make any promises yet, but I think I want the same future you do." Isaac's smile was brilliant. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and Diana let herself relax into his embrace. She felt safe here, cherished, and it was a revelation. Winter came to Colorado with snow and bitter cold. Diana's business slowed during the harshest months, which gave her more time to spend with Isaac. He came to town as often as the weather allowed, and they spent long evenings by her fire, talking and reading and simply being together. Sometimes they played chess, a game Isaac taught her with surprising patience. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, each working on their own projects, content in each other's presence. It was in January, on a day when the snow fell thick and soft outside her windows, that Deanna realized she was completely, utterly in love with Isaac Wendell. The realization came quietly, without drama or fanfare. She was sewing a quilt square and Isaac was reading a book in the chair across from her, his reading glasses perched on his nose, and she looked up and thought, "I love him. I trust him. I want to spend my life with him." The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with a deep, quiet joy. "Isaac," she said softly. He looked up from his book. "Yes, I love you." Isaac went very still. Then he carefully set down his book, removed his glasses, and crossed to where she sat. He knelt beside her chair and took her hands in his. "Say that again," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I love you," Deanna repeated, more confidently this time. "I am in love with you, and I trust you, and I am not afraid anymore." Isaac closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. "I love you too, Deanna. I have loved you since the moment I saw you watching the world from behind your window, looking for something to hope for. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret trusting me." Then he kissed her, and it was different from their first kiss, deeper and more passionate, full of promise and commitment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it has only been 8 months and I said I had time to wait, but marry me anyway. Let me spend my life proving that I am worthy of your trust." Deanna laughed, a sound of pure happiness. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They were married in April, exactly 1 year after Isaac had first ridden into Platteville. The church was full of well-wishers, including Samuel Jacobson, who gave Deanna away with tears in his eyes. Mrs. Henderson cried through the entire ceremony. Deanna wore a dress she had made herself, simple but beautiful, and Isaac wore a new suit that made him look impossibly handsome. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed Deanna with such tenderness that half the women in the church started crying again. Deanna felt no fear, no doubt, only overwhelming joy and gratitude. She had thought she would never trust again, never love again, but Isaac had proved her wrong with patient, steadfast devotion. They moved into a small house on the Jacobson property, a foreman's cottage that Samuel insisted they have rent-free. It was larger than Deanna's old place, with room for her sewing work and a view of the mountains from the kitchen window. Deanna set up her dressmaking business in a spare room, and word spread quickly about her marriage and her continued work. Far from losing customers, she gained new ones, as women came to see the proof that even the most broken hearts could heal. Isaac proved to be everything Deanna had hoped for in a husband and more. He was unfailingly kind and patient, never raising his voice, never making her feel small or afraid. He encouraged her dreams and helped her plan for the dressmaking shop she still wanted to open someday. He made her laugh with his dry humor and held her when the nightmares occasionally returned, whispering reassurances until she calmed. In bed, he was gentle and attentive, always making sure she felt safe and cherished. Deanna had expected the physical intimacy of marriage to be difficult, given her past, but Isaac's patient care and genuine love made it beautiful instead of frightening. He took his time, learning what she liked, never pushing, and Deanna discovered that she could trust him with her body just as she had learned to trust him with her heart. By summer, Deanna knew she was pregnant. She told Isaac on a Sunday evening, nervous despite knowing he would be happy. He was more than happy. He was ecstatic, spinning her around in the kitchen and then immediately apologizing, worried he had been too rough. "I am pregnant, not fragile," Deanna laughed. "You can spin me around." "I am going to be a father," Isaac said, his face filled with wonder. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Deanna asked, needing to hear it. I am the happiest man alive, Isaac said, pulling her close. You have given me everything, Deanna. A home, a family, a reason to believe in good things again. I love you more than I can ever say. Their son was born in March of 1880, a healthy baby boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Daniel, after Diana's father who had passed away the previous year. Deanna's mother came from Denver to help with the birth and stayed for 2 months, marveling at the transformation in her daughter. You are so happy, she said one afternoon, watching Deanna nurse the baby while Isaac hovered nearby, fetching whatever Deanna needed before she could even ask for it. I never thought I would see you like this after what Thomas did to you. Neither did I, Deanna admitted. But Isaac showed me that not all men are like Thomas. He showed me that love does not have to hurt, that trust is possible if you find the right person. He is a good man, her mother agreed. Your father would have liked him very much. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Isaac continued his work as foreman, with Samuel's increasing reliance on him and hints that he might someday inherit a share of the ranch. Deanna ran her dressmaking business from home, working around the baby's schedule. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable and, more importantly, they were happy. When Daniel was 6 months old, an opportunity arose that changed their plans. Martin Guthrie, Deanna's former landlord, decided to sell his properties and leave Platteville. Among those properties was a building on Main Street, a good-sized structure with large windows and living quarters above. It was exactly what Deanna had always dreamed of for her dressmaking shop. We should buy it, Isaac said when she mentioned it wistfully. We cannot afford it, Deanna protested. You are saving for land. We can adjust our plans, Isaac said. Your dream matters just as much as mine. Besides, if you have a shop in town, you will make more money and we can save up again. It makes good business sense. They talked to the bank, combined their savings with a small loan and bought the building. Deanna cried when she signed the papers, overwhelmed by the realization that she owned something substantial, that she had a real business, that her dreams were coming true. Opening day was in November, and half the town turned out to see Deanna's dressmaking establishment. The shop was beautiful, with bolts of fabric displayed on shelves, a large work table by the window, and 3 fitting rooms in the back. Deanna had hired 2 young women to help her, and business was immediately brisk. Within 6 months, the shop was turning a profit, and Deanna was working on designs for women as far away as Denver. Life was full and rich. Daniel grew into a lively toddler with his father's easy temperament and his mother's creativity. Deanna and Isaac talked about having more children, but they were content to wait and see what happened. They had time, and they had learned the value of patience. It was on a spring evening in 1882, with the windows open to let in the sweet mountain air, that Deanna and Isaac sat on their porch watching 3-year-old Daniel play in the yard. Isaac had his arm around Deanna's shoulders, and she was leaning comfortably against him, completely relaxed and content. You remember what you said to me that first time when you fixed things with my landlord? Deanna asked. I said a lot of things, Isaac replied. You said you had time to wait, Deanna said. You said you would wait as long as I needed to trust you. I remember, Isaac said quietly. I meant it. I know you did, Deanna said. That was when I started to believe you might be different. That was when I started to hope again, even though I was terrified of it. Isaac kissed the top of her head. I am glad you took the chance. So am I, Deanna said. You know what I realized recently? It has been exactly 4 years since you rode into town. 4 years since you saved my life in more ways than one. You saved mine too, Isaac said. "I was just existing before I met you, going through the motions. You gave me a reason to really live again." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son chase fireflies in the twilight. Deanna thought about the woman she had been 4 years ago, locked behind walls of fear and mistrust, convinced she would never be happy again. She thought about how patiently Isaac had waited, how gently he had helped her heal, how completely he had proved himself worthy of her trust. "I love you," she said softly. "I love you too," Isaac replied. "Always will." Daniel came running up to the porch, his hands cupped carefully. "Mama, Papa, look, I caught one." They leaned down to see the firefly glowing in his small hands, and Deanna's heart swelled with joy so intense it almost hurt. This was her life now, full of light and love and laughter. She had not trusted any man in 7 long years, and then the cowboy had said he had time to wait. He had waited, and she had learned to trust again, and together they had built something beautiful. A year later, Diana gave birth to twin girls, Anna and Margaret, who kept the household in cheerful chaos. Isaac was a devoted father, patient with all 3 children, teaching Daniel to ride and helping Diana manage the demands of business and family. The shop continued to thrive, and they finally bought the land Isaac had always wanted, a beautiful 100 acres in the valley with a creek running through it. They built a house there, a real home with room for everyone, and moved in the summer of 1884. Deanna stood on the porch of their new house on moving day, watching Isaac and Daniel chase the giggling twins around the yard, and she felt a profound sense of gratitude. She thought about the scared, lonely woman she had been, and she could hardly recognize herself in that memory. She had been so certain that trust and love were impossible for her, that the damage Thomas had done was permanent and irreparable. But Isaac had shown her differently. With patience and kindness and unwavering devotion, he had helped her understand that her past did not have to define her future. Samuel Jacobson, who was getting older now but still sharp as a tack, visited often. He always made a point of telling anyone who would listen that he had known Isaac and Deanna were meant for each other from the very beginning. "I saw it that first Sunday at church," he would say. "The way that boy looked at her, like she was the answer to a question he had been asking for years. And the way she tried so hard not to look back. I knew if Isaac had patience, and if Deanna had courage, they would figure it out." Deanna's shop had expanded, and she now employed 5 women and had a thriving mail order business. She designed dresses for wealthy women across Colorado and even some in Wyoming and Kansas. She had achieved every professional dream she had ever had, but her greatest joy was always her family. Isaac ran their small ranch with the same steady competence he brought to everything, gradually building their herd and their reputation for quality stock. By 1886, their lives had settled into a pattern of deep contentment. Daniel was 6, smart and curious, already learning to help his father with the ranch work. The twins were 3, identical except for their personalities: Anna quiet and thoughtful, Margaret bold and mischievous. Isaac and Deanna often joked that raising the twins was like herding cats, but they loved every chaotic moment. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Deanna back to the overlook where he had first kissed her. It was a warm spring day, and they had convinced Diana's mother to watch the children for the afternoon. They stood looking out over the valley, and Isaac pulled a small box from his pocket. "I know we already did this, but I wanted to give you a proper engagement ring," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate gold band with a small diamond. "I saved up for it." Deanna felt tears spring to her eyes. "Isaac, you should not have spent so much." "You are worth every penny and more," Isaac said firmly. He took her left hand and slid the ring onto her finger, next to her wedding band. 5 years ago, you took a chance on a patient cowboy who promised to wait as long as you needed. I want you to know that I would wait another lifetime if I had to. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." Diana threw her arms around his neck, kissing him with all the love and gratitude in her heart. "Thank you for waiting. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for showing me that love could be beautiful instead of terrible. Thank you for trusting me," Isaac replied, "for giving me the honor of loving you and being loved by you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Diana." They stayed on the mountain until the sun began to set, talking about their future, their dreams, their hopes for their children. They talked about maybe having one more baby, about expanding the ranch, about Diana eventually passing the shop to one of her employees so she could spend more time at home. They talked about growing old together, about watching their children grow up and have families of their own. As they rode back down the mountain in the golden light of sunset, Diana reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. 7 years of loneliness and fear, followed by one afternoon when a stranger had saved her from a runaway wagon. That single moment had changed everything, had set in motion a series of events that had transformed her life completely. She thought about how close she had come to never letting Isaac in, how easily she could have maintained her walls and her solitude. The thought made her shudder. She could have missed all of this: the love, the laughter, the family, the joy. She could have lived her whole life locked behind her fear, never knowing what happiness was possible. But Isaac had said he had time to wait, and he had meant it. He had been patient when she needed patience, gentle when she needed gentleness, strong when she needed strength. He had proved through consistent action that he was worthy of her trust, and in doing so, he had given her back her life. The years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and busy activity. Diana eventually did step back from daily management of the shop, training her best employee to take over while she focused on design work and special commissions. This gave her more time with the children and with Isaac, which she treasured. They had one more child, a son named Thomas, born in 1888. Diana had worried about using that name, about the associations it carried, but Isaac had convinced her that they could reclaim it, make it mean something good instead of something painful. "We get to decide what names mean in our family," he had said. "And in our family, Thomas will mean love and joy and new beginnings." He was right. Little Thomas was a sweet, gentle child, and Diana felt no shadows when she looked at him, only light. Daniel grew into a responsible young man, taking after his father in temperament and skill with animals. The twins remained close but distinct, Anna becoming an excellent seamstress under her mother's tutelage, while Margaret developed a passion for horses that rivaled her father's. Young Thomas was still too little to show his inclinations, but he followed his older siblings everywhere, determined to keep up despite his short legs. Samuel Jacobson passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1890, leaving a substantial portion of his ranch to Isaac in recognition of years of loyal service. This unexpected inheritance transformed their financial situation, allowing them to expand their own operation and secure their children's futures. Isaac cried when he learned of the bequest, missing the old man who had given him his first chance in Platteville and had been a steadfast friend and mentor. By 1892, Diana and Isaac had been married for 11 years. Their children were growing up healthy and happy, their ranch was prosperous, and Diana's reputation as a designer had spread throughout the region. They had built the life they had dreamed of together, brick by brick, year by year. On a summer evening, with all 4 children finally asleep after much protest and many requests for water and extra stories, Diana and Isaac collapsed onto the porch swing, exhausted but content. "We did good," Isaac said, putting his arm around Diana and pulling her close. "We did," Diana agreed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that I get to be this happy." "You deserve every bit of it," Isaac said. "You are the strongest, bravest woman I know. You survived something terrible, and instead of letting it destroy you, you built a beautiful life. I am in awe of you, Diana." "I could not have done it without you," Diana said softly. "You gave me the safety I needed to heal. You were patient when I needed patience, and you loved me when I did not think I was lovable. You changed everything, Isaac." "We changed each other," Isaac said. "I was lost before I met you, just going through the motions of living without really feeling anything. You reminded me what it meant to care about someone, to have something worth working for. We saved each other." They rocked gently in the swing, listening to the night sounds of the ranch cattle lowing in the distance, a dog barking somewhere, the wind rustling through the cottonwoods. The stars were coming out, brilliant in the clear mountain sky, and Diana felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "I love you," she whispered. "So much more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," Isaac replied, "and I always will. Until the day I die and beyond, if such things are possible. You are my everything, Diana." They sat together as darkness fell completely, wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built together. The scared woman who had not trusted any man in 7 long years was gone, replaced by someone stronger and happier and more whole. And the patient cowboy who had said he had time to wait had kept his promise, proving day after day that love could be gentle, that trust could be earned, that healing was possible. Their story was one of patience rewarded, of walls carefully dismantled, of love that grew slowly and surely into something unbreakable. They had taken broken pieces and built something beautiful, and they would continue building it together for the rest of their lives. As the years continued forward, their children grew and thrived. Daniel eventually took over primary management of the ranch, proving he had inherited his father's skill and patience. Anna opened her own dressmaking shop in Denver, carrying on her mother's legacy with talent and creativity. Margaret married a horse breeder and moved to Wyoming, writing cheerful letters home about her adventures. Young Thomas became a teacher, patient and kind like his father, beloved by his students. Diana and Isaac grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They became grandparents, then great-grandparents, always surrounded by family and laughter. When people asked Diana about her life, about how she had overcome such a difficult past, she always gave the same answer. "I stopped trusting men after my first husband hurt me," she would say. "I thought I would be alone forever. But then I met a cowboy who said he had time to wait. He waited and I healed, and together we built something more beautiful than I ever dreamed possible." That is the story. Patience, trust, and love. That is all it took. And it was true. In the end, despite all the complications and challenges of life, it really was that simple. Isaac had waited, Diana had trusted, and love had done the rest. They lived long, happy lives together, surrounded by children and grandchildren, secure in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. When Isaac finally passed away at the age of 78, Diana was holding his hand, just as she had held it through countless days and nights of their life together. His last words to her were the same ones he had spoken so many times before. "I love you, Diana. Always will." Diana lived 3 more years after Isaac's death, missing him every day but sustained by the memories of their beautiful life together and by the love of their large, devoted family. when she died peacefully in her sleep at 81, surrounded by her children. Her last thoughts were of a spring day long ago when a patient cowboy had saved her from a runaway wagon, and in doing so, had saved her from a lifetime of loneliness and fear. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, with a view of the mountains they had both loved. Their headstone was simple, bearing their names and the dates of their births and deaths, and one line that summed up their entire story. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love endures. And so it had for them. Through all the years, through all the challenges, through all the joy and sorrow that life had brought them, their love had endured. It had started with a moment of rescue, grown through months of patient courtship, and flourished into a lifetime of devotion and happiness. Deanna had not trusted any man in 7 long years, but the cowboy had said he had time to wait, and his waiting had changed both their lives forever. Their descendants carried their story forward through generations, telling and retelling the tale of the patient cowboy and the wounded woman who had learned to trust again. It became a family legend, a reminder that healing was possible, that love could triumph over fear, that sometimes the best things in life were worth waiting for. And in the end, that was the truth that mattered most. Some things were worth waiting for. Some people were worth being patient with. And some love stories, the really good ones, started not with lightning and fireworks but with quiet determination and the simple promise, "I have got time to wait."